Why does choosing peace sometimes cost you your connections? At some point in life, many of us stop choosing connection, not because we don't want it, but because peace feels safer. It happens quietly. There's no dramatic moment where you decide to pull back from people. You don't wake up one morning and think, I'm done with closeness. It's more subtle than that. It's in the phone call you don't return, the invitation you decline with a polite excuse, the conversation you keep light when it could have gone deeper. And here's the thing, it doesn't feel like a retreat. It feels like wisdom. After decades of navigating relationships, conflicts, misunderstandings, and the exhausting work of being seen and known, something shifts. You start to believe that the quieter your life becomes, the more free you are. That peace is found in what you avoid, not in what you embrace. But what if that kind of peace isn't freedom at all? What if it's just a softer form of loneliness? Let's talk about why this happens. Because if you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. And if you're restarting to wonder whether the calm you've created is actually costing you something deeper, this conversation might feel familiar. There's a reason peace becomes so attractive as we get older. Life has a way of wearing us down. Not always in dramatic ways, but in small, accumulating moments. The friend who betrayed your trust, the family gatherings that turned into battlefields, the relationships that required more than you had to give. After enough of these experiences, your nervous system learns something. Connection can hurt, and so, without even realizing it, you begin to associate peace with distance. You start to believe that the less you engage, the less you'll be disappointed. The fewer expectations you have of others, the safer you'll be. It makes sense. It's protective, but it's also incomplete. Because what often masquerades as peace is actually emotional fatigue. You're not choosing calm, you're choosing not to feel. There's a difference. Emotional fatigue doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly, like a dimming light. You stop reaching out, not because you're angry, but because it feels like too much effort. You stop sharing what's really going on inside you, not because you don't trust people, but because explaining feels exhausting. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell yourself you've just matured. You've learned to let things go. But underneath that story, there's often something else, a quiet kind of grief. The grief of realizing that connection takes energy you're not sure you have anymore. If you've ever felt this way, take a moment and leave one word in the comments that describes what peace means to you right now. Just one word, no explanation needed. I'm genuinely curious what comes up for you. There is a phrase that becomes very common in midlife and beyond. I've been through enough, and it's true. You have. You've navigated loss, disappointment, change, uncertainty. You've carried weight that others will never see. And at some point, you decide that you've earned the right to protect yourself from more of it. This is where the mindset shift happens. You begin to see emotional exposure as a risk you no longer need to take. Drama. You don't want it. Conflict. You're done. Intensity. Too much. What you want now is simplicity.com. A life without complications. And so you start pulling back. You stop initiating plans. You let friendships drift. You keep conversations polite and surfaceable. You say yes to solitude more often than you say yes to people. And it works for a while. The noise quiets down. The calendar clears. The emotional demands lessen. But here's what no one tells you. The same walls that keep out chaos also keep out closeness. The same boundaries that protect you from pain also prevent intimacy. And slowly, without realizing it, the peace you've created starts to feel less like serenity and more like silence. Let me paint a picture. You see a text from an old friend. Someone you used to talk to regularly. They want to catch up. Your first feeling isn't excitement, it's fatigue. You think about how long the conversation will take, how much emotional energy it might require. You worry they'll want to talk about something heavy, or ask you for something, or expect more from you than you're ready to give, so you don't reply right away. Maybe you'll respond tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe never, and you don't feel guilty about it. You feel relieved. Or maybe someone invites you to a gathering. It's not that you dislike these people, you do. But the idea of being on, of smiling, engaging, asking questions, remembering names feels overwhelming. So you decline. You say you're tired. You say you're busy. And technically, it's true. But the real truth is that connection feels like work now, and you're not sure it's worth it. This is how distance becomes your default. Not because you're cold. Not because you don't care. But because protecting your peace has become more important than risking discomfort. And here's the tricky part. It can look like emotional maturity. It can feel like boundaries. It can sound like self-care. But if you're honest with yourself, it might actually be avoidance. If something I've said so far has resonated with you, if you've recognized yourself in any of this, would you consider liking this video? Not for the algorithm, just as a way of acknowledging that this conversation matters, that you're here for something real. So what's the cost? What do we lose when we choose peace over connection? We lose the possibility of being surprised, of being moved, of being seen in ways we didn't expect. We lose the texture of intimacy, the moments when someone says something that shifts your perspective, or makes you laugh in a way you haven't in months, or reminds you that you're not as alone as you thought. We lose the aliveness that comes from being truly known, because being known requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires presence, and presence requires risk, and risk is exactly what we're trying to avoid. Peace without connection doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like floating, like watching life from behind glass, like existing, but not quite living. And here's what makes it even harder. The longer you stay in that space, the more foreign connection begins to feel. You get used to the quiet, you adapt to the distance, and eventually, the idea of letting someone in starts to feel not just exhausting, but almost impossible. But here's what I want you to consider. What if peace isn't the absence of feeling? What if real peace is actually the capacity to feel without being consumed by it? What if it's not about avoiding discomfort, but about being steady enough to move through it? There's a difference between safety and aliveness. Safety is predictable, it's controlled, it's still. Aliveness is uncertain, it's messy, it's full. And yes, it can be uncomfortable, but it's also where meaning lives. The question isn't whether you deserve peace. You do. The question is, what kind of peace are you choosing? Is it the kind that nourishes you, or the kind that numbs you? Because here's the truth. You can have both. You can have peace and connection. You can have boundaries and intimacy. You can protect your energy without closing your heart. But it requires something from you. It requires awareness. It requires honesty. And it requires a willingness to admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been protecting yourself from more than just pain. If you value reflections like this, thoughtful, honest conversations about life, psychology, and what it means to stay connected to yourself and others as you grow older, I'd love for you to subscribe. This is a space for people who want depth, not distraction, who want insight, not empty advice. If that's you, you're in the right place. So where does this leave us? If you've recognized yourself in this conversation, I want you to know, you're not broken, you're not doing it wrong, you're not failing at connection. You're human, and you're re-navigating something that many people never talk about, the quiet pull between wanting closeness and wanting calm. But here's the invitation. Start noticing. Notice when you pull back. Notice what you're protecting yourself from. Notice the stories you tell yourself about why it's better to stay distant. And then ask yourself, is this peace, or is this fear dressed up as wisdom? Because connection is still possible. It's always possible. Not in the same way it was when you were younger, not with the same energy or frequency or intensity, but in a way that's real, in a way that matters. You don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to force relationships that don't fit. You don't have to be available to everyone. But maybe, just maybe, you can stay open to the ones that do matter. The ones that feel like home. The ones that remind you what it's like to be truly seen. That's where real peace lives. Not in the absence of connection, but in the presence of it, chosen carefully, held gently, and lived fully. You haven't lost your capacity for closeness, you've just been protecting it. And now, if you're ready, you can choose to use it again.